We're on. Good evening, everyone. Welcome again. Welcome. Wilderness Wednesday is me and Minister Jazz, Minister Pope. We're back again, but we got some new guests with us. More or less, y'all check in, start sharing this, and start tagging somebody and let them know that we are in Wellness Wednesday now, and we're going to have a great and wonderful conversation. I'm just excited about this conversation. I think every pastor, every ministry leader needs to be on here because we're going to have a great conversation when it comes about engaging millennials in the church. So I have two wonderful guests with us, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves kind of in their own way. First, my good friend and brother, he is the pastor of the Eastview United Church of Christ by the name of Pastor Jeremy Watson. You introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about the context where you pastor how long you've been doing it, and kind of what you've experienced while you've been there.
Yeah, man. First, I just want to say thank you, for even having me. I appreciate the consideration, man. It's a pleasure to share with you all tonight. But yeah, I'm Pastor Jeremy Watson, pastor of the East United Church of Christ in the Shaker Heights, Cleveland area, Ohio. I've been there now a little over a year. Just celebrated a year, the second Sunday this past February. And it's been a good experience. I pastor a predominantly older congregation, historical church. My predecessor, he had been there for about 30 years. Dr. Valentino Lassiter was a professor at John Carroll, really respected man. And the journey thus far has been a learning curve for me. It's been one where I've had to intentionally learn people. And I won't say it's been a struggle. I'm like the perfect balance between an introvert extrovert, you know what I mean? So I love people, but I also love my long time. So for me, I had to intentionally, build relationships and learn people. One of my favorite quotes, Dr. Lance Witt from his book Replenish, talks about how, you don't drift into relationships. Does that make sense? So, it's been a learning curve, spending time with them. Again, I'm a millennial, and my average member is between 65 and 85.
Mm,
So yeah, Doc. So but
that's good.
it's been a very fulfilling journey. I love older people anyway, so that age demographic it wasn't a difficult adjustment. Like I said, just spent the first year learning personalities, learning gifts, learning the context where I pastor. You know what I mean? That's very important. Learning strengths and weaknesses. Learning who I can trust in certain positions and areas of leadership, to have transform vision. So that's been my journey, thus far, man. I've been enjoying it. Can y'all hear me?
That's that's good.
Yeah.
Man, my thing is going in and out. Jazz, I'm gonna need you to take this. I'm gonna try to figure out what's wrong with my audio. Jazz, you take this conversation. I'm gonna come back in. I'm
Okay.
gonna hop back on in.
Amen. Bless the Lord for my
All right.
soul.
So we're gonna keep going.
Sure.
Make this work with all the technical difficulties and stuff. We'll have Adelaide introduce herself fully when she comes on. But um so let's talk. I we didn't get a chance to really discuss who we are, in the context of this, but I'm Minister Jasmine Pope. I am one of the associate ministers at the Canaan Manifested Word Church here in Toledo, Ohio, under the leadership of Bishop Randall Parker III. So I am one of three of our millennial ministers. We all got licensed on the same Sunday, and so each of us has kind of followed our own path as we figure out who we are in the context of being ourselves first off, just as millennials in general, and then millennial leaders within the church. So I guess I'll throw out this question: being that you are a pastor and you are pastoring in older congregation, how do you still find yourself as a millennial and being, in ministry and getting that feel that you need in the context of the church?
I think it's balance. You know what I mean? Understanding that what past generations have been accustomed to.
Uh-oh. Did your volume go out?
Look, wait. Oh Lord. Oh Lord. Okay. Oh Lord.
Can y'all hear me?
Pastor.
I can hear him.
You can
You
hear
can
me?
hear him?
Yes.
This is nothing but the devil.
You know what the devil.
This is nothing but the devil. I can hear. Look, the folks, the saints can hear on Facebook, but we cannot hear in this stream yard. What is going on tonight?
No. Can y'all hear me
You know
now?
what? You know what we're gonna do? Jazz, we're gonna try to get this together. I'm gonna Jared pass it, go on out and come back in.
Okay.
And Jazz, you introduce the next one. Lord Jesus.
Okay. So we're gonna come back to that question. We bind every distraction right now through the airwaves because we know that this is needed on tonight, and so we're just going to declare that as we move forward that the enemy be stopped, because I think this is very necessary, not only for us who are pastors and in ministry positions, but there are millennials that are out here that need to hear this, that need to hear how the church is going to help them, or just to hear their voice. And so I thought it not robbery to bring on, she's one of my baby Neos. People call her my twin. They confuse us all the time. But Adelaide, so Adelaide, just give us a quick introduction of yourself and kind of just give us a little bit of background into your journey as far as it relates to being a millennial in church, because I know you have a little bit of a different aspect of things than some of us who are on the call tonight.
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Adelaide. I went to school in Toledo, and now I'm in Cincinnati. I grew up as a super preacher's kid. I don't even know how far back I can go. Every great grandfather was a minister in my family, and my father has built so many churches. And that was part of the reason why we moved to Cincinnati. And so I felt like growing up, it was pretty forced. I didn't really have a choice. I was just a super church kid. And so when I went to college, I was just caught up in a college lifestyle. I didn't really feel the need to go to church on Sundays. And then finally moved back to Cincinnati on my own. Wasn't going to church for a cool 2 years. And so my mother and my father were always on me like, you need to go to church. And I was like, yeah, it's okay. I'm working. And so I don't know. I don't really know what my excuse was. I just felt like I wasn't ready, to be honest with you. I just didn't want to be in church if my heart wasn't there. And so I had experienced some things. And finally I was like, maybe your life will be a little better if you go to church. So I completely stopped going to my father's church, and just with one of my sorority sisters, we were in the same place, and we were like, let's go check out some churches in the city. And I now go to a church called Corinthian Baptist Church. And I had been going there for a few months, and then COVID-19 came, and it just completely trumped the whole situation. So that's kind of where I'm at. So I think that's where Jasmine chimed me in, because I had made a post feeling like completely disconnected, because I felt like I started my journey and then it was like, nope. So I've kind of just been, I feel like I had a setback. So that's where I am.
Right. So being that you were in church all your life, and then we all have to find ourselves. We have to get to a place where we find God for who he is in our lives, and not because our parents said, our grandparents said, all those different things. So, your journey has been your journey. You find yourself, finally ready to get back into church. You get into church, and now there's this pause, right? Because we could assemble, but it's not in, you know, the best interest of the people because of all the liabilities and different things of that nature, right? So how do you continue to grow and develop yourself in this time? Like, are you getting that from your ministry, do you feel like, or have you found your own personal balance of, you know, still keeping yourself together? Like, what has that been like for you?
So for me, to be honest, that has been extremely challenging, um, because I had been out of church for so long. I went to college in 2013. So 5 years of just not going to church at all. And then having to come home and then being forced. So I do struggle with that because I just feel like, it's difficult to finally make that gesture and just go in. And so now, like, I don't have an answer to that because I feel like I don't want to say I gave up, but then it's like I don't know how to go back because when I started going to that church, I knew absolutely nobody. I just kind of went in there, and the church is also a lot of older people. There's not a lot of millennials actually. It's actually just me and my sorority sister. So if she doesn't go, I'm in there by myself. And so mustering up the courage to say, "Hey, I'm a visitor." Like, I just couldn't do it. So
Yeah, that's awkward.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's been challenging to just reach out and be like, "Hey, I've been going, but we just stopped." So I really haven't been connected. And my connection is when I'm in the building. So I think that is my challenge because it's like without being in that atmosphere with everybody else, I feel like I'm just not there in my brain. And that's just my honest feeling on it.
So let me so let me ask you this per se. I don't know if you kind of talked about it on your perspective. I'm gonna get back to you for a pass. We're gonna get to you.
Oh no, man, you good.
Um,
I'm enjoying it.
so my question is, and I always want to know, and I think us as pastors want to know because now that COVID is going on, I know before COVID happened, I know we began doing like group chats and stuff like that. So did the church like start doing like a group text message with, you know, those same age groups, or did they, or what do you look for? I other than the building, you said that's where that's your forte is being in the building.
Yes.
Like what is a way, I guess, us as pastors from your perspective could be, I guess, something to engage with your age group, knowing where you are right now, where you're going, and the fact is that you're getting back, you know, inside, you know, back in the body of Christ, and you know, continuing to progress your life. So help some pastor out or someone like that, you know, from your perspective of, you know, what do we need to do like now that during COVID's going on that can keep you being like, okay, I know things are rough right now, but I got this.
So something like this was very helpful. Um, because like I said, my church, we don't have a lot. I really haven't seen more than maybe 5 young people, and I'm 25. So I haven't really
Wow.
seen that. Um, so I don't know if they just don't pick up on it, but I think it's something that if you don't have a church that has younger people, you have to notice because if your age group is 40 to 60 and you have some 20-year-old walking in, I think somebody should be looking at that. And I think that if you do have millennials, um, something like this is great. And the way Jasmine approached me, obviously she's my sorority sister and her and I have a different kind of relationship, but I didn't even know what I was getting into. She was like, "Hey, here's an opportunity, you should join." I was like, "Cool." And now, and so,
Verse 6. See what Jazz do.
yeah, that she's done out my since I've known her. But it is nice because sometimes I think at least somebody like me, we kind of feel afraid. I think if Jasmine would have been like, "You're about to be on the church call, Adelaide," I would have been like, "No, I gotta work." I would have had some kind of excuse. But having a platform like this, I think works because I'm able to be honest and share how I feel. And then it's a place that pastors can, you guys can hear our perspective.
Mm.
And I think there just needs to be just a better way of reaching out. Um, and making us feel included. And not that I didn't feel included, but the whole stand up if you're a visitor, stand up if you, that's very, I've never liked that. And I'm a preacher's kid. Like, it just makes you, it doesn't make me feel a part of it. Like, I don't want to be on broadcast because I'm somebody that hasn't been to church in 5 years. So if you approach me on something more intimate and develop a relationship, then I'll be more open to doing something like this, which is why with Jasmine, it's okay, if that makes sense.
That's so let me okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'm one of them pastors. Look, look,
Okay.
Jeremy, I'm sorry, Jazz, I'm sorry. Look, I'm one of them pastors that be like, all right, if you a first time visitor or your second time, please stand up. And look, at this point, look, I used to ask them their names, but then I said, you know what? We welcome you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, all that good stuff. So from your perspective, you know, and I'm just, you know, knowing now from that other side is that so what does a follow-up look like for you, or what does, I guess, a personal touch that can help a pastor or a ministry leader to know that, okay, millennials, like, and this is like even during COVID, like, okay, people who may watch for the first time, like, what is a way that you, once we contact you, like, okay, I see this church really about it.
I think for me, it would just be like inviting us to certain sessions and having something where it's, if there's more than one millennial, having something as a group and then asking, what do you guys need help with? What do you guys want to see? Something like that, so that I can feel like my voice is heard and what I need from the church is being given to me. But for me, I guess it is hard because if I don't raise my hand and say, hey, I'm new, you probably would have just never known. You probably would have thought I was visiting 7 times. So I don't know if there needs to be a search group to where it's, and I know that might sound funny, but I don't know if it needs to be like, be on the lookout. And this is just specifically for millennials, be on the lookout for who is in the building and who keeps showing up and follow up with them. Because there's a reason why I keep coming. I'm coming because I love my church. And I sat in the same spot every Sunday. So it's just kind of like, I think just, you know, or organizing something, or matter of fact, organizing something for just new millennials in general. Just having something just for us.
So
I have a
brother
question
Pastor,
for real quick for the two of you as pastors. Have you guys read The Welcoming Church? It's a book called The Welcoming Church.
Nope. Not familiar with it.
nope, I didn't do that. I've been too
So
busy reading
it's
James.
Right.
it's a book. Actually, our my pastor had had our ministerial staff read it, but it gave us a different perspective on what it's like to kind of take a step back, right, from us, because for most of us, you know, us being in ministry, we've been in the church for a while, so we're used to all the nuances and we're comfortable just coming in and going with the flow and all of that. But for someone who is new, who has, you know, they're either new to the church in general or they're trying to find somewhere because they've left the place, it's like we had to kind of take things into perspective from of like seeing how they can feel about things. And so one of the things that it brought forth in that book was about like the visitors thing. Like for some people, they do like it because it makes them feel like there's a time to greet them and welcome them. But then there are others who feel like, well, I walked in the door and 9 times out of 10, y'all knew I wasn't a member here and nobody greeted me until this part of the, you know, the service. So it's like that can be a two-edged sword, you know what I mean, with welcoming visitors. So I think that's something that Adelaide pointed out, but I think it's also a resource that's out there for those of us who are in ministry, to get some get some knowledge and some other tools to be able to use when we see new people, especially our millennials walking into the building.
Yeah,
Pastor.
Oh man, just piggybacking off of what everybody's already said, there has to be balance. I think ministry in general should be holistic, where everyone can integrate in the part. If ministry is kingdom work, is the objective, is the goal, there has to be a meshing of all demographics. And that's not to say that the way our grandparents did it was wrong. It's not to say that we have all the answers, but there has to be balance. You know what I mean? And I think just what I'm gonna call her Sister A. I can't pronounce your last name.
Yeah.
Adelaide.
But I was gonna call you to say too.
I think again, I was saying at the beginning, relationships have to be intentional, even Christian relationships within the church. So there has to be, someone that when millennials come through the door, that we recognize that, and we have to have or be creative enough to make them feel a part. You know what I mean? Because our generation, I will say that our generation, I think, wants more of God and less of politics and less of tradition. I'm one that grew up, was raised in the church. I'm Baptist to the bone. I love church. Okay. But at the same time, though, I recognize that most of my peers, even some that were raised in the church, there was a shift, you know what I mean, where they want the authenticness of God. And it's not so much about the tradition. They just want God. So then what does that look like depending on your context? I don't know. You have to figure the pastor and leadership has to figure that out. But that should be intentionally done though. You know what I mean? It can't just be this is how we do things here. This is it. Again, if the goal is kingdom work, saving souls, being the tangible Jesus Christ within the earth, then we have to sit down and figure out a way that everybody feels welcome.
So let me ask you this, Pastor. You said you grew up Baptist, right?
Yeah, Doc. Yes, sir.
And now you're pastoring a different denomination,
Yeah.
United Church of Christ. So,
Mhm.
so has there been any struggles, I guess, in your journey, knowing that you're a millennial pastor,
Mhm.
to an older congregation? And I'm just talking from my experience being a millennial pastor. Were there
Absolutely.
any struggles, and then, trying to get them to understand like where you're trying to get them to and where you're trying to get them across, because I think there's a lot of millennial pastors or pastors who are starting up in this
Yeah.
pastoring work, and it's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely difficult. Breaking habits are difficult. Change is difficult. One thing that I've learned is pace is key. Being a millennial pastor, pastoring or serving the church where again my demographic is predominantly between 65 and 85 years old. Coming to a church where there was no online giving, they had a tech team but didn't have any social media presence. You know, and them not understanding the significance of that, and that being another tool to be able to reach souls. It was difficult, but at the same time, Dr. Harry Blake talks about, man, a technique he used called what he would salt the diet. And he uses a metaphor, how you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? And now his father taught
Right.
him that, if you salt a horse's diet, you won't have to lead him; he'll go to the water. So the same thing in ministry, those people who kick against the vision and you trying to show them the significance of social media and the convenience of online giving and just being creative and innovative, those that don't see that, you have to start the diet. COVID-19 was as horrific as this crisis has been. It was in a way salting the diet because now we have no choice but to have online worship. We have no choice. If we want to keep the doors open, we have to have online giving. So man, it takes pace because again, they're accustomed to a certain way of worship. They're accustomed to a certain way of handling church business. So you never want to come in and let's change this, this, and this, because now you're creating anxiety because they've been used to something, right? For so long. You know what I mean? And then also too, man, I told them it's disrespectful for me to come in and just try to start changing things. I don't even know the culture here. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
pace is huge, man. Being consistent is huge because one thing about the older generation, when you are a younger pastor, leader, and they allow the leeway to make change, if you're not consistent, and I'm not saying being perfect, but if you're not consistent in the vision and making sure you're doing whatever you can to make sure you progress, doing the work, that's going to be the first thing they point out. Once they see you slacking, you know what I'm saying, and it's not consistent as far as your work ethic and due diligence, man, that can be such a hindrance to people accepting and loving the vision just as much as the leader does. So, man, pace and consistency is huge when trying to transition.
Wow,
That's
that's
good.
good. That's good.
Yeah,
And
yeah, man.
and that's crazy that you say that, because I that's kind of my place too. And I'll give this, and I don't know what was your demographic again, Pastor, when you first came in,
Predominantly,
about the millennials that you had. Like, how many millennials did you have when you first came in there, and what it is now?
bro, when I first got there, I maybe had about five millennials, about five
Okay,
millennials. So we're up now to about maybe 10.
that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
That's
It's
good.
consistently, yeah, maybe 10. Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
I got to tell y'all a secret. When I first got to my situation, I only had two.
Okay, okay,
It was
okay,
me and somebody else.
okay.
Look, it was me and somebody else. But then over time, and that's another thing, like knowing your culture. And I think, like, for any pastor that's watching, trying to figure out how to engage, I think it's using a culture that you know, and navigating to get them to understand,
Exactly.
the fact that, it's not the future. The future is now. So,
Absolutely.
it's trying to work around that. And I honestly think too, I think messages come into play too, because I think when we talk from our hearts again, these are like these are important things. I think it's beyond just talking about the normal. I guess, and Sister A, I want to make sure I'm saying that right. Uh, so let me ask you, Sister A. So I was talking about this not too long ago. What type of message, and I know you're saying not to dictate, but what type of I guess messages, or what type of, I guess, structure when it comes to your life experience are you looking for, when it comes to this? And I look at your comments. Y'all comment below. We're gonna bring them up. But what are you looking at, Sister A, that can help both of us, especially with the culture that is right now?
You mean like from a sermon?
Either a sermon, a Bible study, even just life ministry, just per se. Like, I guess what you're not hearing enough. I'll say like that.
So for me, well, another point that I think is important is I'm like real African. So I grew up, and I'm Methodist, and I'm going to Baptist church. So there's another thing. But so this is my first time actually going to an American church, and I love it. Um, so on the good side, I truly don't have an issue with the message. I feel like the way that my preacher preaches, anything he says, I feel it in my heart. So
Okay.
I never
Good.
feel like I don't understand. Like I don't have that problem. I would say when I was going to my dad's church and anything affiliated with that, there was just such a disconnect. Um, I wish I knew how to explain it. I felt like certain pastors just had their own agenda, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
And that was just what they was focused on, and then there was nothing that was broad enough to where I could feel it in my heart, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
It's like being a
Mm.
politician, and you got what you want, and that's all you're gonna talk about.
Mhm.
And I think that was one of the main reasons why I quit going to my to those churches, because I'm like, man, y'all don't have, you got to have a way where you can reach everybody, no matter how old the person is or what they look like or what they've been through. So I guess that is a message that I want to hear. is something that can apply to everybody's life, no matter what stage they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's something that's difficult to do, but I know that my pastor does it well. Yeah.
I think we're in a time, and I can say for myself, Pastor Strong, Pastor Jeremy, that like I said, we grew up Baptist. So even if the pastor didn't have a true word, if they gave a good hoop and a holler, the church went crazy, and you felt good, but you went home kind of like, what did I get, right?
Exactly.
We are in a time now where that does not work, because we are dealing, especially as millennials, being between the two generations that we are, the one that's before us and the one that's coming after us. We've got a lot of weight, we've got a lot of pressure. We are the ones that are going to lead the next generation into the future, and so we've got to have that sound mind, that sound understanding of knowing the word for ourselves, so that we can impart that into other people in the various things that we're going through. And so we're coming out of the touch your neighbor and the all of that stuff. We want substance. You know what I mean? I want to know that, as a millennial who is dealing with anxiety and depression, how can I handle that on a spiritual level? You know what I mean? Like, how can I come to the church and really understand biblically that it's okay for me to talk to my therapist as well as talk to the Lord, in dealing with, and I think we're going to segue into this, but with what's going on in the media right now, does the church really care about the social justice issues that mean a lot to us as, one, as Black people in general, but then as millennials, because we're seeing all of this, we're dealing with all of this. We want to know, what is the church's place in all of that? And so, all of that stuff, the won't he will, and ain't he all right, and I know he's all right, that was good, you know what I'm saying? And it still hits me from time to time when it happens, you know what I mean? But we want to know, where's the substance, where's the depth, where's the word that is going to empower me, because I'm going from Monday to Sunday dealing with hell everywhere around me, right? How do I use what I'm getting taught on Sunday and maybe on a Tuesday or Wednesday in Bible study to really be able to use that every day in my life?
Yeah. And that's what I was saying, Jazz, is I feel like he does that well. I don't know if he's doing research. Like, I don't know if I mean, that's God, but it's just like, I don't know what it is, but he really finds a way he gets me. And that's how I feel. And I know that sounds so cliche, but I think that's important when you go to church. Because when you leave, you can say, I can use all of this for this week. So yeah.
I think
so
I'm sorry. I was gonna
no, go ahead.
back off of that. I think Dr. Martin Mickle kind of talks about that in his book, Where the Prophets Are. I think it's a disservice not only to the call, but to the gospel message when you don't preach with the prophetic voice. And what does that mean? That's you having a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other hand. Making sure that the gospel message applies to what my sister just said. The daily struggles of this generation. You know what I mean? I don't have just one lane, and that's I'm known as the prosperity preacher. No, that's not the call. The call is to preach the gospel. You know what I mean? So
right.
I totally agree with that, man. And I think that's I think a wrestling match that goes on between preachers, is the understanding that you've been called to preach with the prophetic voice, man. And that ain't talking about God told me to tell you that. I ain't talking about that.
Yeah.
Exactly, application.
You say you don't work, Sister A?
I said no. I was saying that doesn't work. Don't.
Right. Yep. Yep. So
because what do I do once I get the prophecy, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, you can give me the prophecy, but what do I do after that if I don't have the word to come behind that? Like you said, in the prophetic voice of giving you the word that helps to build you for your future and what God has for you and all of that. That prophecy is kind of null and void in some instances.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So let me let me kind of get the comments, because there's so many comments. So Chris Pope says so
Hi,
many
Chris.
millennials and people who aren't frequent church visitors hate that moment of greeting visitors. It's very uncomfortable for them and they feel unauthentic.
Yes.
All right.
That's good. I totally agree with that. Like, I totally agree with that. Again, I think that's just something, man. Us as millennials, and not even really millennials. I know a lot of generation prior to us who don't even like that. People just want to come to church. You know what I mean? Experience God, and I don't need the whole stand up, tell us your name, who invited you, your church home, stuff like that, man. But I totally agree with that.
And
I think there
I
has to
think
be the
that's
balance.
Yes.
I think it's also awkward for me because sometimes I'm like, I'm not coming back. Or I'm here because my
You weren't
mom
trying to
said we
come
was
back.
going here on Sunday. So
Right.
for me, and so it's that pressure. And I think that is another thing that drew me away. Now you got somebody calling me every Sunday. Hey, sister, was you? I said, Auntie, I was just here for this. I'm not coming back. So it's just kind of like, for me, and I hope I don't sound rude, but it's sometimes I wonder if it's genuine. Are you calling my phone to recruit me to your church because you want more people? Or
Mm.
are you, because that's weird. And so
Yeah.
it got to a point where I quit answering the phone, and my mom was like, that's so rude. I'm like, but why do you want me to join the church? Is it?
Stay there.
Yeah. And so that's
Good.
why
Stay
I don't
there.
stand up.
That's good.
And so at my church, I was gonna stand up in March, but Corona happened. I was ready to raise my hand and be like, "Hey, I've been here for 5 weeks, and this is my church home."
Yeah.
Like, so that's what I want to happen. But I just don't like that. I think that's what I struggle with.
Mhm.
And you know what? I will say this, and I think unfortunately, look, and I mean we're all millennials in this conversation right now, and I think unfortunately with church culture, we look at numbers. As much as we say we don't look at numbers, we always look at numbers because we're
Right.
always counting a face we've never seen before. And
Mhm.
when we don't see a face, guess what we doing? We getting our administrative team, we getting our greeters. All right, start write it down. All right, y'all get the number because didn't you get a connection card many a times, Sister
Yes.
A?
Didn't feel
Look,
it.
and they say put your phone number down. Put your
Right.
phone so we can call you. And look, they and 9 times 10 they doing it because they try to see if they can recruit you. And I mean that's the reality of it all. Is some churches, not gonna say all, because there's churches that they love Jesus and they say whosoever will let them come. But there's just some churches that will be like we'll treat millennials because that's a big thing. I think before COVID, and we're gonna get to during COVID now. I think before COVID, I think a lot of churches didn't actually want to, I guess, accept the agency and the power that millennials could bring, but rather they could say, "Hey, I got this age group at my church. What you have at your church?" So it
Oh
was more or
wow.
less like a competition of, "Oh, I got the most millennials here at my church." Because I got their phone number and I'm talking to them, and you probably won't see them until like Christmas, Easter. So
I mean, I think we have to get to, a place, and not even just specifically for millennials, but within each generation of really assessing the gifts, the talents, the skills that are within those generations and being able to come together to work together effectively to build ministry. I think this is one of those times as we talk about during COVID and post COVID of really having to look and assess, okay, how do we bridge all of these gaps together to make it so that the older generations, they're getting what they need, because they're not always technologically savvy and have all of those resources. So we still need to meet the needs of them. But we also have these millennials who have all these skills, they have all these abilities, they know how to work the technology, they know how to do this, they can help with some of these things, and being able to put that together to make ministry successful inside and outside of the church, because being inside of the church isn't all that we are called to do. And COVID has really brought that forward. And so we need to be assessing what's in the building, not necessarily the physical building, but within all of our members or those who are coming to and want to be a part. What do they have so that we can utilize them? Because oftentimes what in research that I've done, millennials get brought in because they do have all these great ideas, they do have all these great skills and talents, but somebody else takes the credit for it. Or they give
Yes.
all the
Yes.
information and then they're pushed to the wayside, or you're not good enough, or you're not ready yet, you can't work in ministry. So now I got some church hurt, you know what I mean? Because I thought I was coming to a place where, one, I'm supposed to be getting the word and getting, healed and building these relationships, but then I've been pushed to the side because of, you wanted my gift, but you didn't want me.
Mm.
That's good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good.
Okay, since y'all were bringing books, okay, have y'all got the book, What Google Can't Give, The Relevancy of the Black Church for Black Millennials?
Yes.
I'm telling you, that book will bless your life. Now, Pastor Jeremy, I got a kind of question that I want to add my 2 cents. So now that COVID is going on, someone to help a pastor that's listening right now, what are some of the strategies that you're putting in place, that you're engaging millennials, and even beyond that, how are you engaging other generations, and what type of functions or programs are you doing that can help a pastor or ministry leader to do the same in their context, even if it's different?
Absolutely. Again, first, number one is knowing your context, and then also too, just being creative, being consistent as far as engagement, and then I think too, man, another huge thing during this season, I've listened to, parishioners, man, and we have to know when to not go overboard. You know what I mean? There goes that,
Yeah.
that pace again. You know what I'm saying? When we're constantly just, throwing stuff at you. I mean, you doing Zoom calls Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Robocalls on Friday and Saturday. But just knowing your context, man, and I was on a podcast about a week or so ago, and I asked the gentleman, we were discussing, or the question was raised, has it been more work or has just been different work? And I think we both agreed that it's been both. It's been different and it's been more work because we've had to really think outside of the box, be creative, and then be practical. You know what I mean? Case in point, as far as online worship, I have members who don't know how to use a computer or who don't even own one. So what do we have to do then? We have to think of other avenues where they can still get the word. That's where conference calling comes in. We're able to link that and they can still listen. You know what I mean? So know your context, man. As far as any pastors out there, be practical. We even went as far as, and this is actually a little bit before COVID, when we were really transitioning, as far as growing our social media presence, where we sent out to our email database instructions of how to get on to our Facebook Live and to our YouTube Live for our older members who don't frequent the internet. You know what I mean? So for pastors out there who are trying to keep those engaged, be creative, learn pace, don't overwhelm people, and then also too, learn how to, it's good to add stuff, but also keep some familiarity, you know what I'm saying, within your vision. That makes sense, So at Eastview, we're still doing our normal prayer hours. We're still doing our normal Bible study. We've added other things. Like I know we did a challenge a couple of weeks ago where I made like a video. I sent it out via our robocall, social media, our email database. And the challenge simply was, calling and checking on a few members. There were some other details part of the challenge, but it was creative. It was fun. It kept them engaged. I also do a call where I send a robocall just simply, so they can hear my voice and I'm praying for y'all. I love y'all. I miss y'all. So it's just being really creative to keep that sense of fellowship, and also too, to in your creativity, there has to be encouragement. You know what I mean? Don't forget that because people are going through it in this space right here. People are really worried and panicking, man. And I think within innovation, you have to also include remind them that there is hope. Be encouraged. God is still on the throne. That type of thing. But again, to any pastor that's listening, don't overwhelm your people. Know the context. Lean it. Have fun with it. Keep them engaged. Keep that sense of fellowship. And I think, for me, it's worked for me, in my context. And people really enjoy it. It feels so good to have, like on Sunday mornings when I look back at the live stream, some of my members that are like 85, they're like commenting in the comment section. Like,
Wow.
it's like, that's what's up. You know what I'm saying? Like, that makes
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
it gives me the energy to keep doing what I'm doing because I see now they're embracing it. You know what I'm saying? And and it is possible. I think it's another thing too. A lot of times as leaders, we're scared to make certain changes or transitions because they may not like it, they may not catch on to it. But man, pray about it. Again, know your context before making that decision and go full speed ahead and have fun with it. So
That's major, man,
yeah.
and I think that gives me some things to work with, because even before COVID happened, I said I had to have a conversation with myself and say, okay, I'm focusing on one generation. I'm focused on my seasoned saints, my seniors. I'm focused on the other generation, and even the youth. And it's like, okay, what about that middle ground? What about my generation? My age group. And they started coming, and I had to understand, okay, it's more than me just preaching a relevant
Sure.
word.
For
I need
sure.
something to do life with these people, because
Sure.
my context, some of them, some of them go to school, some of them work, and some of them have families,
Yeah.
and so what avenues? Because I think in our context too, us as the church are sometimes the other avenue that people rely on, because when
Mhm.
they get tired of the usual city life or the things on the outside, they want to know, okay, is there something different for me? And the
Mm.
church, I think our job is to provide that resource so that they can have something alternative rather than just doing the same thing over and over again. And I
Absolutely.
think one of the things that I started doing was I did once a month taking them out to eat. Man, I can't even tell you, with that conversation, having taken them out to eat and was like, hey, listen, I'm not judging. I may be pastor, but look, I'm
Yeah.
Joseph. So,
Right. Right.
don't feel like you need to, hold anything back. Tell me how you feel. And they told me what they felt about the church. And it was in that moment where they felt like, Pastor, we appreciate you that you took time to really, let us be real and raw with you. And sometimes it was outside, because sometimes, and I mean, let's be honest, sometimes people are more vocal outside the church. I mean, it
Yeah.
may be because of the sacredness of the
Sure.
building,
Sure.
but it was because they had that opportunity to share. And they were telling me preachers that they also listen to.
Mm.
And I think that's another thing. I think a lot of preachers and pastors get insecure when our people listen to other people other than our own voice,
Mm.
which again, we have to be okay with that. Look, I don't listen to my pastor all the time. Look, I listen to whatchamacallit, I listen to William Curtis. Now, I love me some William
My
Curtis.
pastor. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yes, I love me some William Curtis.
Yes, sir,
But
buddy.
it's the fact that you got to listen. There's other voices. Like, my people were listening to T.D. Jakes and Sarah Jakes Roberts. Look, they want Sarah Jakes Roberts to come. I'm like, look, I don't have Sarah Jakes Roberts' money, but
Do it, Lord. Do it.
we can find something. We can find something. But it's the fact that they were willing to share, and I think, like, now during COVID, I know my context, and I create a group message, and I'm thinking about doing like a Zoom with them, of like doing like a brunch, something just
Yeah,
to keep them engaged during this time.
for
Now,
sure.
Sister A, now you wouldn't be opposed to like a Zoom, not on Facebook Live though, but like a regular Zoom where you can see folks and you're in the comfort of your own place.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I think too,
Okay.
man, bro. Like what
Okay.
you said, I think one of the greatest gifts of a pastor, man, is a healthy boundary of transparency. Especially for our generation. You know what I mean? When they are able to see, those who they, look up to as far as leadership. Like you said, you went out to eat with them, and they were able to just have conversation with you. You know what I'm saying? I think that's huge. It segues into you being able to be creative and give them alternative, events, whatever case may be, just atmospheres where they can come, have healthy dialogue. You know what I'm saying? And just be themselves. That's so important. I think for our generation, man. Again, I hear it all the time. For some reason, we have this stigma, that the church is fake and phony and stuff like that. And I think the more they're able to see, and again, it has to be a healthy boundary. Don't get me wrong, you know what I'm saying? It has to be a healthy boundary.
Yeah.
But I think transparency will do for my generation so much more versus the pastor trying to beat them over the head with scripture. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, with that, you're able to then segue into any other creative atmospheres. I know not at my present church, but my other church I came from, we would do things like, instead of a sip and paint, we would do a praise and paint. You know what I mean? We would have people come in, we'll have a guy come in who's teaching people how to do art and draw, blah, 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 and music playing, desserts, but it was that atmosphere, it was that relaxed setting where, people who never would come to a Sunday morning worship were enjoying themselves in the basement of a church, you know what I mean, and actually ended up coming to church with their following week. You know what I'm saying? So it's just that level, man, of transparency. I think does a lot for our generation, man.
Yeah. As we're talking and, even looking at some of the comments and, you're talking about, how,
My
especially
bad.
I think our generation, how we find connection with Sarah Jakes Roberts because as a millennial woman, I can relate to her, being young and making some of those same mistakes, having children out of wedlock. So she's a draw, you know what I mean? And sometimes I may not feel, because sometimes it's present, but you don't know different people in your church. But sometimes it's like I got somebody that I can connect with that's, outside of my normal circle of things. But, even thinking about, Mike Todd, he has the book Relationship Goals out right now. Even just in here thinking like, that's something that I could probably bring into Millennial Women's Ministry at my church, because I know I see a lot of them that they're following him, and that's a book where we're all at our different stages of relationships. We can meet, we can talk, we can bring that connecting piece of someone that, we all kind of like, and, have that open dialogue and discussion. So I think there's different ways where, maybe we don't have the necessary finances to bring a Sarah Jakes or Mike Todd or whatever to our buildings, but we can still use, some of their materials to bridge that gap and still give them a sense of connectedness, that, and like you said, not showing that we're intimidated by someone else who's, preaching and they've got this platform or whatever, but that at the end of the day, these are all tools that we have to be able to build up our people, and to make them better Christians, so that as we can do our job in going out to make other Christians, because we're building each other up and living the lifestyle and changing and working to be better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. So we can't end off. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Y'all just put in the comments below how much y'all enjoy. It's just so many comments. I'm gonna try to get through them as much as possible. But there was some that you said, Jazz, and some that you said as well, Sister A. I'm sorry, I just have to keep on calling you Sister A. Look, you
That's
can catch
okay.
me on the back. You catch me on the back end. But I think with everything that's going on right now with our nation, even in our world, I think over the past couple of days, I think it's just not only just speaks to millennials, but I think it speaks to everyone. And when you were talking about what does the church say, actually, I just got done talking about that, before tonight of, it's time for the church to, to stop being so silent. Honestly, all of us felt some type of way. I don't know if you guys saw the video or not. I actually had the strength to watch the video of George Floyd, and it was painful to watch, to see. And for some reason, I'm just gonna be honest with y'all. It did something different to me. I mean, I've seen videos before of, you see Eric Gardner, you saw Mike Brown, you saw what they did to Sandra Bland, all these people, you saw what happened, but like for this, like, and it's not even COVID, it just did something different. It just hit different. I don't know about you guys, but it hit different.
Yeah. I agree, bro. I think people are exhausted. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing the same narrative play out with no real change. No real acknowledgement. And it, like you said, I was approached too. What is the answer? You're the pastor, so what is the answer? What do we do? Stuff like
Yeah.
that. I think, man, I think everybody has a part to play. One of the most frustrating things for me is when this happens. We're outraged. You know what I mean? Everybody's upset. We're part of the movement, but then, as weeks go by, then we return to our normal life. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
And one of my friends, he's an activist here in the city of Cleveland, Kyle Early. He said a long time ago, everybody has a part to play. Everybody has a lane. So my job, I'm not going to be out on the front line, marching, stuff like that. That's not my lane. But I still have a responsibility to do something. You know what I mean? And I think that's the most frustrating part for me. It's like, don't just be upset when it happens. What are you doing in the in between time? You know what I'm saying? How are you showing demonstration? How are you raising your voice? Are you still running for a mod? You know what I'm saying? Months after, you know what I mean? So I think, that people have to take inventory and really have a real conversation with themselves and sit down and see where can I impact. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what that looks like for everybody. I know what I'm able to do, but I think at least we have to, realize that, you know what I'm saying, that it's going to take all of us, man, all of us, it's going to take dedication and commitment to bringing some type of change, man. And I have my own political beliefs, but I'll leave that for another podcast.
I think something that my church, this is another reason why I love them so much, is because, and I don't know if it's a Baptist thing, because I didn't see it in Methodist. They, like, prior to before church began, they brought in like different people that were running for different I don't know. Like, they brought in somebody that was running for a judge. I know that when COVID-19 started, they had like the church nurse give a whole presentation. And so I remember, like, they brought in police officers, like they just, and so I felt like when things like this happen, I like knowing that my church said, hey, we're not gonna tell y'all what to do, but y'all need to vote. And when that happened, I was like, okay, so like I like that, because I felt like my church was involved. Like they were involved, like they knew what was going on in the community. And that was all you needed to do. I don't need you to tell me that we all going to vote on Thursday. Like, I don't need that, but that alone made me feel like my church took a stand. And whereas other churches, we would spend time praying, but sometimes you got to be about that action. You can't just be praying all the time. You got to stand up for something. So when my church did that, that's another reason why I'm very drawn to them. And I like that, because they didn't pick a side. They just told, like, all they had to say was, hey, we're gonna have somebody come up here and talk about why you should vote for them. And that's all. And it wasn't 30 minutes. Like, it was just a thing that they did. So I think that's how the church can do their part, especially if you have hundreds of people that go to church. So yeah.
Yeah, Pastor Jim, going off of what you said, I recently read the book, The Seven Mountain Prophecy. And so, I think it, ties into what you said, because within the church, we have people who are attached, are called to these seven mountains, right? And so when you know where you're assigned, then you can go out and do the work. You know what I mean? And that doesn't mean that all the mountains have to be separate. We come together, but we disperse and strengthen the people for wherever they are assigned. And so while somebody within the church may be connected to the political arena or to the governmental arena, I've got somebody else working in the finance mountain, to maybe we assist with financially and how to that campaign,
Right.
different avenues of, maybe there's a protest or some type of fundraiser to send to the families, or, different things of that nature. And so we, I think the church can come together and be more strategic, that maybe, we aren't in, 1960 civil rights era where the church is out and always marching
Right.
and doing all of those things, but there's still a part that we can play.
Exactly.
As we talk about, when I look at my lens is a lot of it is the mental health piece. How do we keep our people, from dealing with the reoccurring trauma that happens because we keep seeing the George Floyds, the Eric Garners, the Sandra Bland's, the Trayvon Martins, you know what I mean? How do I go out, especially within the Black church, and dealing with, our Black men? How do we motivate and keep them encouraged? Because Black men in the church, is a very small demographic.
Right.
We're working, I think all churches are working to strengthen that, but even with, that's a small demographic, and then you guys are out here dealing with so many things. Do I have to worry about my pastor, walking out of the church and something happening to him because he's just a Black man? Because the police don't understand that he's the pastor of the church. They come by and they do something. You know what I mean?
Right.
These are all things that we have to worry about on a day-to-day basis. But I know in my lane, I'm there to encourage and motivate and give an avenue for people to come and talk and say, I am tired of this.
Right.
I'm hurting by this. You know what I mean? And like Adelaide said, I can't just keep praying about this.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I give it to God. I trust him, but I want to do more. Okay, how do I, help encourage you to effectively do what you feel is necessary, without causing more harm to yourself? And so, we have to just look at that and come together and work together to be able to see where people are. And I think that's understanding who's in your ministry, what their strengths and what their weaknesses are, but that also comes with relationship.
Yeah. I think that's huge too, just continue the conversation about everybody doing their part. I think a lot of times we get discouraged before we even put our hands to work because we think we have to have like some huge, title or position. We're busy trying to hit the home run. It's just like, no, you doing your part could very well be you recycling your dollar in our own community. You know what I'm saying? If you're on the development team, for the city, gentrification is not always the key. That's you doing your part. You know what I'm saying? So I think, again, a lot of Black people, man, we don't get involved as we should, or just do our own part because we think so little of our input. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to be this huge major. I don't have this title or whatever the case may be. It's just like, no, man, anything you do for the movement, for the oppressed is needed, is valued. And it definitely makes an impact, maybe not in this generation right away, but you begin to build a legacy so that your children see, oh, mom and dad was involved in this, so they pick up on stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like it's so important. Please get this, whoever's listening, if you haven't been, do your part, please, it's needed, man. It is so needed. Don't just be outraged and upset right now, but get involved, in your local NAACP chapter, whatever it may be. Get involved. Recycling our dollar, building wealth within our own community. Get involved. So.
Yeah. Talking about that, there's one question comes from R. Carter Thomas. He asked the question, how does the church help those with PTSD even post-pandemic?
So I think that comes with, one, we have to really define what trauma is, right? Because we're talking in the Black church context, right? We don't always identify trauma as what it is.
Yeah.
We've normalized it. We make it feel like it's okay or that it's not that big of a deal. And so we have to really define what it is so people have the understanding of it and knowing, what it is, how it impacts them, and then giving them the skills and the tools to utilize to be able to move forward from there. And I think that comes with awareness within, our churches talking about it. I know my pastor has openly preached about PTSD, which has been helpful because I think it helped people to see like, man, even if it's not a diagnosis that they're given in the moment, I've dealt with trauma, period. You know what I mean? And then connecting with the tools and the resources that are out there. There are certain things that the church within itself cannot handle, right? Or, they're not
Mm-hmm.
equipped to do. And so that's where you find people like myself, and R. Carter Thomas, a few other people who I know who have joined the live that are licensed professional clinicians, as well as having, a strong Christian biblical background to be able to assist in that. And so I think, once again, a lot of that we talk about when we talk about it, it comes with partnership, realizing that the church does not always have all the answers or all the resources, but the church is connected to those who have them that can
Resources.
assist with building it up.
Yes.
Yeah. That's good.
Wow. That is good. I don't even know how to end up. I just think that, look, I feel like we didn't finish everything, but I think that hopefully that this was an encouragement to those who are watching, those ministry leaders, and even pastors and churches, to know, even in this season, we talked about pre, during, and even post COVID-19, how you can still engage with your millennials, and even with every generation is, again, know your context, try to stay consistent with it, and then more or less stay in your lane. Amen.
Right.
But I think Sister A really put it on the head, because I think, honestly, we do so much of assumptions, and this has come from all three of us, because we all were raised and grew up in the church, and this has come from someone who went away for a minute, because it was so much. Because I think in times like that, I think that a lot of people, they get forced into doing something that they didn't make that decision themselves to do.
Yeah.
And it hits on the back end, and then when people are, well, why did they leave when they went to college, or why did they go? Well, maybe if you looked at what was happening before 18, always force them to go to Sunday school, or going to Bible study, or force them to go to choir practice, or Easter speeches, or plays like that,
Yeah.
that literally can play into them not loving the church like they should, because they see it as a chore rather than an opportunity to grow.
Yeah,
So
that's good, Joe.
yeah, so I think I'm done talking, Jazz. You take the rest of this. I'm done talking. I'm gonna shut
All
up.
right. So, as we close, I think the big piece that came out of tonight is, really listening to those who are connected. And I don't think it just specifically entails, although this was Millennial Matters, I think we heard it loud and clear that we need to pay attention to the voice of every generation
Yeah.
that the church is connected to be able to properly assist them with growing and being better, and doing the work that we are supposed to do. And so, COVID-19 has really shown us that we have got to step out of our comfort zones to some extent to be able to really understand it, to really assess, understand, and then put into plan and then into action what that looks like. So I just pray that for every leader on here, I even know that for myself as a leader within the church, that I've taken mental note of, many of the things that were talked about on here tonight. And we'll be working to put those things into action. And so that's the biggest thing, is that now you've got this information. What are we going to do with it? How do we move forward? And how do we continue to grow and strengthen and then build the kingdom?
Yes. Pastor, any final words?
No, man. Like, I've enjoyed myself tonight. I love, healthy dialogue and having conversation, man. I know it's an old saying, but iron truly sharpens iron. So it was just good being with you all. You know what I mean? Getting everyone's perspective tonight. So I appreciate it.
Sister A, any last?
Oh yeah. Thanks for having me on the call. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna reach out to my pastor now. I think this was just something that I needed, because I was just like, yeah, I'm not gonna get on that live on Sunday.
That's what's up.
But
You're gonna be the first one starting to watch party.
I'll see what happens go
Oh,
Sunday. But I am gonna reach out to him and just have this conversation.
That's good.
Awesome.
So yeah, I do
That's
appreciate the
awesome.
call.
Yeah, awesome. Well, until then, y'all, thank y'all so much for watching. And we'll see you next week for another episode. And y'all let us know what y'all want us to talk about next week. But until then, y'all stay sanctified, and most importantly, stay